In this May 2024 update on the latest current account special offers and news, I've got details of 3 different bank switching promotions, plus a change to the trading 212 cashback card. Before we get into those, though, I've got some other kind of little bits of news information that are well worth sharing for you. First of all was the sad news that YouGov Finance has pulled its connection, its sharing ability, where you give them access to your current accounts, plus savings accounts and credit cards, and in return, they give you points, which you could cash out potentially if you did it enough accounts connected and you did it 4 times a year. That could have been worth £200, which was fantastic. But sadly, in the middle of April, they stopped offering this promotion. Now, they've said it might come back in some form. I imagine if it does, it'll be far less lucrative, so possibly less points and less accounts you can connect. Now, interestingly though here, even though they've stopped giving you points back for this connection, your accounts are still connected. So if you don't want to be sharing your data and get nothing in return, make sure you do log into your account and stop those connections all the way through so they don't keep getting that. Also, if you are shy of the threshold needed to get points to cash it out, you need to get £50 worth of points, then you're going to have to look, if you want to get those points through, you're going to have to look at the different polls and questions that YouGov app also offers. I've not tried this myself. I'm not always a big fan of this, but give it a go. It might be enough just to get you so you can get that payout. Talking of things that are closing, not as many bank closures this month, which is not really something to celebrate because there are still some going. But this time there's a small number. Halifax, Bank of Scotland and RBS have announced that will be going in this year. But that follows already a huge number of announcements across all the different banks. Now, if you do want to find out which banks are closing, which particular branches, we have got guides to all of them over at becloveryourcash.com. And I'll also put in the show notes and the links to this video. You'll be able to click through and look at which ones are closing and when. Something else that is closing is the overdraft facility with Triodos Bank. Triodos is possibly the most ethical bank out there, and certainly one that I think some people are willing to pay that £3 fee every single month in order to have knowing that kind of thing is happening with their banking. So sadly, in the middle of June, the overdraft facility will end. If you are an existing customer and you have an overdraft, particularly if you are using it, just make sure look at the communication they've sent you, because they'll tell you exactly what you need to do before that date. Talking of ethical banks as well, Cooperative Bank has made a change. Now, if you have a current account with them, they have something called Everyday Rewards. And this required you to use your debit card a huge amount, and loads of times, in order to get a maximum of £2.20 back every single month. I've never been a fan of this because it felt like such a massive amount of faff for a small amount of money when you could get way more far easily with different banks. Of course, the ethical option with Cooperative Bank has often been a reason for people doing this. However, they are going to stop doing this from the 31st of May. You'll stop earning points. Now, if you're already earning some money from that during this month or previous months, you'll get that payment for the May transactions at least at the end of June, and then that will go completely. Now, whether they replace it with something else, we don't know. But what is happening with Cooperative Bank is that they are currently in negotiations to be taken over by Coventry Building Society. Now, it's still early days, and we don't know exactly what that will mean for customers of either the bank or the Building Society. If there is room for more information, I will share that with you. Obviously, if you do have a lot of money and savings with Co-op and with Coventry Building Society, something to keep in your back of your mind. But in terms of everyday banking goes, I guess at some point they'll either close down their current accounts or potentially they'll transition it over into a Coventry one. Again, we don't have those information so far. Talking again about the ethical side of Cooperative Bank, if people are concerned about what this might mean, don't forget that building societies on the whole are pretty ethical when it comes to your banking, because the bulk of the money that you save with them or you owe them in whatever way with credit cards or things like that, they will go towards lending people money for mortgages, hence the name building societies. So they're unlike many of the other big high street banks where your money could be going towards, funding a new oil pipeline or investing in arms firms. That kind of thing's not going to happen. So there shouldn't be so much of an issue there. Interestingly, this is the second building society taking over a high street bank that could be happening this year, because as you know, Nationwide is planning to take over Virgin Money. We'll wait and see what happens there, if it's going to happen or not, but all cards looking like it will happen. And we'll come back to Virgin Money later on as well. Right, some app news for you now very quickly. This is just a personal one. I thought it worth sharing it with you. I got a check the other day. Get checks so rarely, but this one was from an American Express refund that I had, and they sent it in the check. So I thought, you know what, I'll pay it in with the Starling app. Starling's my main bank, so I use that app, and I've done it in the past. Uploaded this £10 check, that's all it was, and thought, right, that's all great. And then I had a quick look, hang on, let me just check, and it hadn't come through, and there was no record of it, no information there at all. So I tried it again, and this time I noticed a notification popped through that said the check was too blurry, it couldn't read it. And I thought, well, that photo I took was not blurry at all, it was absolutely fine to read. So I tried it a third time, got exactly the same response, it wouldn't accept it. Now, I vaguely, in the back of my mind, I've got a memory that when I've had this problem in the past, it was because I just got on a light background rather than a dark background. But I thought, you know what, screw this. I'll try the new feature that Monzo also has recently introduced, where you can take a photo of a check and pay it in. Did that, no problem, took it first time. And this is, I think, an experience I've had a few times. So just really heads up, if you are using Starling to pay your checks in, when they randomly happen, do just make a note to check that it has gone through, because very easily I could have missed that and that £10 would never have reached my account. There are a number of other current accounts now that the apps do allow you to pay in by check, and we've got a whole article about those at becleverwithyourcash.com, so do check that out if that's of interest. There's a budgeting app, Emma. You might know this one. There's not too many of these. We obviously had Money Dashboard close this year or late last year. Emma is one of the few ones that are remaining. Well, they have recently made some changes, or they're starting to transition the changes, I should say, over during May, from so a lot of the features you want on the free account into the paid accounts, which makes it, I think, kind of pointless now. You can still add more than 2 current accounts to it, so you could see 2 current accounts all in one screen, all the transactions, but I really don't think it is worth doing that at all. If that is something you are concerned about and you do kind of like using that kind of feature, you can pay for it with Emma. I wouldn't bother doing that at all. You can have a limited free features in Snoop, which again is not too bad. Give it a go. You could pay with Money Hub, which is really good. That gives you a 6-month free trial, which is decent to see if you like it. And after that, it's relatively cheap, £1.50 a month. So cheaper than all the other ones when you pay for them. And you get much more functionality, but of course you are still paying for it. But give that a try for 6 months, see what you think. Or, as we'll get to in a minute, you might want to pay for one of the new Monzo tiers, because Monzo, when you get above the free tier, does let you add multiple current accounts and does have all those extra budgeting and tracking features. And that's not just applying to the Monzo account, it applies to the other ones that you add. But again, you pay for that, and sometimes they can be quite expensive. We'll come back to that in a second, because there's one more app news to give you, and this is around Revolut. Now, this might not happen, but I thought it's worth just mentioning it. They have hired a TikTok executive who is looking into how they could put adverts on the app. So personally, not something I like the idea of, that every time you're trying to banking, a thing pops up and gets in your way. Who knows? It might not happen. I'm pretty sure at some point it will happen. If Revolut do it, I'm sure other banks might also do this. It might be like we've seen with Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon, that if you don't want the adverts, you can pay more to get rid of those. So yes, another way the banks might be trying to charge us a fee. Again, just worth sharing that with you, because it was something different that's happening, and we never know. If anything's happened, more information, I'll let you know. Now, Monzo, that's what I'm talking about now. So I've also done this in much more detail in a separate video. Plus, over at becleveryourcash.com, we've written 3 far more detailed individual review articles of each of these new tiers. But this is the news that Monzo has scrapped Plus and Premium, the paid-for tiers, and replaced them with 3 other upgrade tiers. You've got Extra, which is £3 a month, and this allows you to do more of those kind of budgeting features. So that was the one I was alluding to just now, where you could potentially add other current accounts to it and do that as a kind of a tracking budgeting thing across multiple accounts, not just with Monzo. Still don't think that's necessarily worth it, but it is £2 cheaper than Plus was. So if you're on Plus right now for those extra features, then certainly worth looking at downgrading. There's not too many differences, but again, we've covered that in more detail elsewhere. The next level is called Extras. This one is £7 a month, which sounds, again, quite expensive. As you know, I'm not a fan of paying for these accounts if you're not going to be making a profit from the rewards overall. This is the one where you might be able to make a profit on, because you get a free rail card, which is worth £30 a year, although there are often deals to get it for 20 or 15 quid during the year. Plus, if you go to Greg's every single week anyway, or most weeks throughout the year, you get a free drink or a sausage roll or a cake. That varies between sort of £1.20 and £2.50. Broadly speaking, if you go to that most of the year and buy the rail card, that will cover the £7 fee. So if you're doing that anyway, that's not a bad shout. Plus, you get those extra budgeting features, which are quite nice. Again, I wouldn't just sign up for this if you're not already spending that money. But again, it's one to think about. And the one above this is their packaged account. This was Premium, which was £15 a month. By the way, if you're still with Plus or Premium, you can stick with them. But if you leave them at any point, you won't be able to get back to them. But Premium was £15 a month. The new one, Max, is £17 a month, so £2 extra. It does have additional breakdown cover. Plus, you get that rail card and those Greg's things. All those things from the previous tiers are included as well. But this time, the insurance doesn't cover your whole family. It covers just you. It's an extra £5 on top if you want to cover your family. Again, check out the video we gave our first thoughts from a few weeks ago if you want to find out more about that. If you want to deep dive into each of those separate accounts, do check out the reviews at Be Clever With Your Cash. Speaking of packaged accounts, there are also some price increases worth sharing with you from Lloyds and Halifax. From the 1st of July 2024, the Halifax Ultimate Reward account, again, this has travel insurance and phone insurance and breakdown cover, things like that. That would increase from £17 a month to £19 a month. The Lloyds Silver account, this is Currently, £10 a month, that'll go up to £11.50 a month. This is the one that includes European rather than worldwide insurance, which is why it's at the cheaper end of things. And the Lloyds Platinum, that increases from £21 to £22.50. There are also those club account versions of those two Lloyds accounts, which come with an extra £3 fee. But don't forget, you can always avoid that £3 fee with any of the club Lloyds accounts if you pay £2,000 into the account every single month, which doesn't need to be in one go. The other change that is happening with these Lloyds and Halifax premium packaged accounts is that from the 1st of July, it will be fee-free to spend with those cards overseas and take money out of cash machines. However, even though it's nice to have, if you've got these accounts, that's great. Still not my top picks there. I'd still be looking at the Chase debit card for that 1% cash back on your overseas purchases. Or potentially, you might want to consider the Trading 212 card. Now, again, I covered that in more detail just a few weeks ago when it started to become more available to more people. And although it had that fee-free spending overseas with that kind of very, very, very close to the market sort of exchange rates, so particularly good exchange rate, potentially better than you see on the Chase and Monzo and places like that. The cashback rate on it was just 0.5%, which wasn't that exciting and nothing really to get excited about at all, I would say. However, they have just temporarily increased it to 1.5% for existing and new customers until the 1st of October. So what's that? We're in May now. So May, June, July, August, September, October. So you've got just under 6 months at this increased rate of 1.5%. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to activate the offer. If you've got the card or when you get the card, you can get this rate. Now, the monthly cap, however, is still kept at £20 every single month, which means your spending now will be about 13 grand every single month before the cashback stops. That is still a huge amount of money. If you're spending 13 grand, then you are, every month. That's very, very rare. So basically, all your spending will be at 1.5%, pretty much, maximum £20 of your earn until October. And then October, it will drop back down to 0.5%. So this sounds quite good. You might be thinking, well, actually, I will give this a go right now. However, it is still not yet available to add your virtual cards to Google Pay or Apple Pay. Now, Trading 212 say they hope that it will be approved on Apple Pay this month, and then Google Pay maybe it'll take about a month after that. So hopefully at some point in May, Apple, sometime in June, Google. Obviously, these things can push back a little bit. So unless you want to pay £5 for an actual card to be delivered, you're still going to be quite limited in how you can earn this 1.5% cashback. Really, it's just online transactions. You could look at something like Curve, and I've read about a few people have tried this, and some have been successful, but a lot of people have had issues with this. So again, I think this is really, for a small amount more cash back compared to what you're getting elsewhere, is probably not worth it. Now, finally, let's end on those switching deals. Now, 2 of them I have covered in separate videos, so do check those out for more information. First of all, we have the £175 from First Direct. This one also, when you get this account, don't forget you can get that 7% paying regular saver. So it's a really good option to go for this. Again, I've talked about this in more detail, separate video. And for each of these, there is a full analysis over at becleverwithyourcash.com/bank. So you can click through and get more information about each of them. So that's the First Direct one, £175. We don't know when that will end. Virgin Money, I said I'll come back to them as well. They have also launched their first bank switching deal since, well, it's been 19 months, so late 2022. So I imagined, so I told you last month, maybe they'll never do this again, particularly in light of the news that they're looking to be taken over by Nationwide. But they have. They've launched one, which sounds fantastic at first. 10% cash back on the first £1,000. Plus, underneath that, the current account itself also gives 2% ongoing cash back on 1%. So that's 12% cash back because it won't compound, because the interest, if you've got the full £1,000 in there, any interest you've got earned won't earn those rates. You're basically looking at a £120 bonus, which is great, right? Really good. Not as good as some of the other switching deals, but if you haven't done Virgin Money before, or you're eligible for this one, then that one kind of looks great. However, what you've got to bear in mind, as I do detail more in a separate video, that you could obviously be earning 5.15% on a grand for a year right now, which knocks just over 50 quid off that total. So really you're looking at 70 quid, just under 70 quid as kind of profit from this switch. There is a way to boost that a little bit more by going via Snoop, which is that budgeting app I mentioned earlier on as well. Another 35 quid potentially there. So you're looking at 100 quid profit, maybe 100, just over 100 quid, worth considering. Now, the last one to tell you about, I haven't done a separate video on it because it is going to be relatively limited who can get it, but it's worth sharing with you now in more detail. This is Danske Bank. Danske Bank, you might get, who are they? I have never heard of them. This sounds great. I'll definitely be able to get a hold of this because I've not had money from them before. Well, that will be the case if you live in Northern Ireland. Sadly, if you do not live in Northern Ireland, you cannot get this unless you already have an account with them in the past. You've already opened it up because you used to live there, or maybe their terms and conditions were slightly different. but sadly, you won't be able to get it otherwise. But if you are living in Northern Ireland and you have not had a switch offer from Danske Bank since the 1st of January 2023, and you're not already an existing customer, so maybe you could have been with them, but since subsequently left them, there is £200. This can be paid pretty quickly, 10 days after meeting the criteria. And the criteria is really, really simple. You switch from a different bank, as you do with all switching deals, and then deposit £1,000 within 60 days. That is it. Nothing else you need to do, and that money can be yours. So a good one to go for if you are living in Northern Ireland. Sadly, everyone else, you're missing out. Don't forget, though, becleverwithyourcash.com/banks is where you will see the latest list of all the different bank switching deals and more information about those. And any new ones that launch, obviously, I'll tell you about them here on the channel. But I'll also write about it there. So do book that, mark that one, and keep an eye. My name is Andy Webb. Thank you so much for watching. Check out these videos here for more ways to make the most for your bank.